Hi, this is Gecko Mayhem. This is another Godforge video. Today we have quite a few characters to showcase. There's concept art, models, blockouts and renders. So let's get going. First, we're going to dive into the Aru faction. This one is based on Egyptian mythology. The first character is Cleopatra. The historical figure Cleopatra was Queen of Egypt. She had a relationship with both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and she was known to associate herself with the god Isis. Sometimes she would dress up in particular garb that reflected the goddess that she worshipped. Cleopatra was said to have had a prominent nose. There was a quote from a 17th century philosopher, Blaise Pascal, who said, "Cleopatra's nose, if it had been shorter, the whole face of the world would have changed." As you can see, she does have quite a prominent nose. I really like what they've done with the Cleopatra model. All the golds and blues, the greens, like the green of her sash here, the green reflected on her staff with the cobra intertwined. I think the snake that Cleopatra is mostly associated with is an asp or a black asp, but to me this looks more like a cobra. However, very cool aesthetic, really cool model of staff and of Cleopatra herself. This headdress, really cool, lots of gold. Next up we have the Asgard faction, which is based on Norse mythology. This character here is Ulfhedna, sometimes known as Ulfhethna. Ulfhethna were Norse warriors. They wore wolf skins to embody their ferocity and strength. They were kind of similar to berserkers, unable to feel fear or pain in battle. And in Norse mythology, Ulfhethna were Odin's warriors, and they were said to be impervious to iron and fire. Which reminds me of the Eelfin from The Wheel of Time, who were weak against iron, fire, and music. At this time, we don't actually know which rarity Ulfhethna is going to be. I would suspect that he's going to be at least a rare, if not potentially an epic, but I don't really want to guess for sure. Let's just take a look at this model for a bit. I like to look at the models as they come along because I think they've done such an amazing job with just everything in the game so far. We can see that they have enlarged his body as compared to some warriors. He's got this really cool wolf-looking headdress, this belt that's fastened around him, really cool detail on that. The bit hanging down indicates that he's in the Asgard faction. He looks a bit like a cross between a hunter and a warrior. And here we have the model of his weapon, which is an axe, and a very Viking-looking axe it is. Next up, we have the Avalon faction. This model here is Gog-Magog, and it's a baked texture. Gog-Magog is an epic character. In Celtic mythology, Gog-Magog was the last survivor of a mythical race of giants. He was thrown off a cliff while wrestling with Corineus, who was a Trojan warrior. Some say that Gog-Magog is a representation of pre-Roman Britain and its old ways, like druidic magic and rune stones and superstitions. Let's just take a look at the model for a bit, as we do with every model. I really like what they've done with the bits of land and moss and trees. He looks like he's part of nature. Barefooted, of course, kind of funky looking beard, this big rune stone on his back, strapped to his back, really cool looking. Let's move on to the Eker faction. This faction is based on Mesopotamian mythology and history. This is Enkidu. Enkidu was a friend of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk. He is seen as the embodiment of the primitive or the natural world, basically the antithesis to Gilgamesh, who is a cultured warrior king. And that's why Enkidu here, as a rare champion, is shown as quite a basic, primitive looking model. It was Enkidu's death that inspired Gilgamesh to seek out immortality. Not a lot going on in terms of accoutrements and attachments in that. But these horns are really cool with the little horn rings there. Quite a simple garb that he has on with his wraps, But all in all, it's a very fitting model for Enkidu. Next we have Sargon. Sargon was said to be the first person to rule an empire many thousands of years ago. He was favored by the goddess Ishtar. The story of Sargon is one that many people could have identified with in ancient times, or perhaps even today. It's one of humble beginnings and rising to power by forging your own destiny. We can see that he is based on Nebuchadnezzar, so essentially confirmation that Nebuchadnezzar is in the game. So as you can see, they have taken his crown and turned it into a headband. He's got a sunburst on his cloak. I think for a rare character, there's quite a bit of detail here, which is very cool and very fitting to the Echo faction. We can even see the weapon that he's using, which is a reskin of a scepter. And both of these scepters here look really cool. Here we see a render of Sargon. This is a much better look at the model that's being used for him. We can see more 3D detail in this. I think it's really cool to be able to see stuff like this. We see the sunburst on his cloak again. We see a lot more about what's actually going on with this character model. The gold, the copper, the dagger, the belt, the leather, the textures, just everything here is really cool. And lastly, we have a textured model of Sargon. So we went from the previous model to one that is fully textured, and it really pops. And now for my favorite faction, the Izumo. The first character that I'd like to show is the Oni. Oni were ogre-like creatures in Japanese mythology. They were usually depicted using vivid colors like red or blue. They were said to have superhuman strength, and they wield a spiked club. You can see the weapon here off to the side is a spiked club. Oni was seen as troublemakers.
Oh, you poor little chump. Don't you have any idea where you are? This is the land below the clouds, the land of no return.
It's also where we live.
In Japanese, the game tag is called Onigokko, and instead of being it, the person who is it is called Oni.
It's simple. We're gonna play a little game and you're it. I'm gonna start running, and if you manage to catch me, then I'll show you where the secret passageway is.
Gotcha!
The Samurai. This is our first uncommon character in this showcase. Samurai were brave warriors, sometimes depicted with supernatural powers. They were protectors who fought against evil forces, mythologically speaking. During the Tokugawa shogunate, which was 1600 to about 1886, I think, there were select samurai who acted as a police force, especially in the cities around Japan. As you can see, the samurai character here is a reskin from another character, Ashigaru. He has the Izumo symbol on his chest, both swords at his hip, so this is probably the katana, and that is probably a tanto from the look of it, which is the shortest. Wakizashi would be the mid-length one. Quite a typical looking samurai, but with bright red, which really makes it stand out. I think they've done a fantastic job, especially for an uncommon character. The next faction is the Omeokan, which is based on Aztec and Mayan mythology. First we have Xochiquetzal. She's an epic champion. She was an Aztec goddess associated with beauty, love, and fertility. Xochiquetzal was the protector of women, especially during pregnancy and motherhood. This Aztec goddess has a connection with nature and flowers, and the artists have really leaned into that with the flowers that are scattered all around her. I like the little touch with the butterfly looking piece on her belt as well. This concept art is outstanding. There are so many bright colors. She's covered in flowers, and her headdress just looks incredible. And I like how they've showcased both her hair and then the back piece that covers her hair. Here are some concepts of her weapons. I like all of the color combinations here. It's just so fitting with the blues and the reds and the greens. Obviously the flowers that are present on all of them. The jaguar's head, I suppose it is. It's some sort of big cat that they would have had in the jungles of South America. Yeah, a really fitting selection of weapons for Xochitl. Next for the American faction is Shkik. She's also an epic character. This goddess's name means blood moon or blood maiden. Shkik was a princess of the underworld, and she was the mother of heroic twins. Just overall, the flowiness of everything. She seems to have extraordinarily long hair. I like the small gestures of association with the underworld, with the skulls, the use of skulls, and the skulls in her lengthy hair. Overall, some very Aztec looking concept art. Continuing on with the Omeocan faction, this is Xolotl. Xolotl is a legendary! Xolotl was the twin brother of Quetzalcoatl. Xolotl is often depicted with canine features and is sometimes called the dog-headed god. This god is associated with fire, lightning, death, sickness, and misfortune. Xolotl guided human souls through the underworld. An interesting note, the axolotl is named after Xolotl, who once disguised himself as a salamander. For a legendary champion, I'm sure he's going to be very powerful, and he looks powerful. I really like the color palette that they use for the Omeocan faction. The greens and the reds and the oranges. Really cool looking character. Last but not least, we have the Virage faction. The first character is Bellybog. We're not sure at this time which rarity Bellybog is going to be, but he could be a legendary. At the least, he's going to be an epic. In Slavic mythology, Belobog is known as the White God. Belobog is the counterpart to Chernobog, the Black God. Belobog is seen as light and goodness against Chernobog's darkness and misfortune. Looking at the model, the angelic wings tell you that he's good. He's full of light. The weapon here, it's a weapon fitting for an angelic being. I can't wait to see this guy in game. He looks like a really cool champion, and I'm sure he's going to have some amazing skills. The last character we're going to look at is the Vampire. This is a blockout of the Vampire for the Virage faction. We don't know which rarity the Vampire is going to be, but I would imagine he's going to be either uncommon or rare. In Slavic mythology, vampires were grotesque undead who fed on blood. Victims were often relatives or family members. There was a lot of superstition around how to become a vampire. Vampires were probably a symbol of things that people just didn't understand, such as disease. I think they've done a fantastic job with this model. Even if it's an uncommon champion, it looks much like how we imagine a vampire to be. It doesn't quite match the description of a Slavic vampire. They were thought of as undead creatures where you'd half rotted away. I guess a bit like zombies more than anything. But this is the vampire style that we're familiar with, where his skin is pale and his eyes are bloodshot and there's a lot of black and red surrounding him. So all in all, a really cool looking model. And that's everything. I hope you enjoyed this look at the concept art, the characters, the weapons, the models, the textures. There's a lot going on. There's a lot we're getting to see. It's really great to just be able to look at what the team is putting out, what the art team is putting together, what's being modeled in game, what's being baked and textured, and the different types of characters like Gog Magog, the giant who's covered in roots and trees, or the vampire who is just dark and foreboding, or just the colors in the Omeocan characters like Xolotl, the legendary champion who's coming. Just incredible. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed going through it. I enjoy looking at all of these character models and the art that's coming out, and I can't wait to get my hands on the Godforge beta. That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.